Okay, thank you for joining us again. Welcome to another edition of the Training-Led Growth video podcast. I have a very, very special guest and actually a friend of Raven 360 and a friend of mine, Andy Vidler. Hello, Andy.
Hey, how you doing, Joe?
Great to see you. Thank you so much for joining in this conversation with me. Andy's got an amazing background. I just want to introduce you a little bit. Spent 25 years with the Royal Navy, which I think is an incredible amount of experience, specifically in this learning and training world that we live in. Then spent a number of years with Dell and is now the Chief Learning Officer at SureSkills, headquartered out of Dublin, and a great business who does a ton of content delivery and learning strategy and a technology advocacy and a bunch of things I'm going to let Andy describe. But and also, as you can see in the background there, Andy's also a kite surfer extraordinaire, although sidelined at the moment, but still a maniac on the kiteboard. So thank you, Andy, so much for joining. I appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate it.
If you wouldn't mind, Andy, why don't we start with just a little bit about SureSkills? Tell us what you're doing. Tell us a little bit about the company, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so SureSkills, headquartered in Dublin, started business in 1993. They have 4 domains, a training and certification division that looks after commercial off-the-shelf training, your standard IT-related courses. They're also an approved partner for VMware, Commvault, Microsoft, all the main protagonists. Moving on from that, they have a professional services division that looks after IT, so install, configure, and manage type of stuff. Very much cloud-based now. And then they have the learning services division that I started with Ross Bolton, our CEO, about 9.5 years ago. Initially started as a design house, providing quite a lot of support to Dell, being more Dell than Dell for our technical capabilities. So our SMEs would basically assist Dell in building their technical product curriculum. As you can imagine, large curriculum changed quite a lot, so our team would design it and deliver it. I left Dell. I was in a global solutions role there and chose to come and set this business up with Ross. And over the last 9 years, we've grown. So we have 4 domains. We have the design and development that goes from strength to strength. We have the support division that provides end-to-end platform support, learning platform support for enterprise downwards companies. We couldn't support Dell, as you know, they're 375,000 users. We support them on their learning management system platforms, and we provide it for various amounts of people. We're a strategic partner of some of your competitors. Excuse me. Post that, they do implementations as well. We have a consulting division, which I think, for us, in our relationship, Joe, that we're seeing considerable growth in that area because, as you well know, the education domain is under massive transformation with, digitization, digital transformation happening. So the consultancy division does quite a lot of engagements around role-based competency learning, how that integrates with digital platforms to deliver a 21st century learning experience. And you're going to hear us as we go through this conversation about talking about learning experiences, which is very much in vogue at the moment. And then finally, we in Learning Service Division, we do managed services. So historically, we've done managed services for the likes of Microsoft for their operations readiness organization, where they were delivering over 600 launches a year. We had a global team that was supporting them. So it's the full range of learning services that we deliver.
Awesome. Let's thank you for that background, Andy. Let me dive right in here and ask some interesting and I think hard questions. We're obviously in a global pandemic. We're obviously dealing with a bunch of people trying to figure out what to do. And then I love what you say about the consulting business you have and digital transformation. Mm. So what are we going to see happen? What are we going to see that happens, that has to happen now because of this issue that the world, effectively everyone is dealing with. What's going to happen?
Yeah, I think, firstly, it's extraordinary times. This has never happened, certainly in 100 years. So if you think about, we're in the midst of the fourth industrial revolution. COVID-19 is invoking a lot of change, and it will invoke a lot of change. If you think about everybody's now working from home, the implications that's having on one bandwidth conferencing facilities as we're using at the moment, this is already driving change management into the way that people are using technology as an enabler. And I think, if you look at the historical way that education has been delivered, it's usually by didactic methods, i.e. an instructor delivers his experience to a class and they take that and impart it and go away and conduct their work in an individual manner. What we're going to see is we're going to see this move to digitization or using digital capabilities to drive more of an experience-based learning in a collaborative environment. So I think if you think about the UK, there's all the school children in Scotland were sent home last Friday. So the established practices of what attainment meant are challenging all the conventional wisdoms that we've had. So, these kids, they used to sit a GCSE exam. That's now been replaced. So it's going to be an assessment or a predictive assessment of how somebody is capable in a role, i.e. these school kids, is now going to be assessed over a given period. And if you think about technology platforms with predictive analytics to give guided learning recommendations, we're going to see this become more and more prevalent in the workplace as well, i.e. what do I need? How do I use it? And as Burson calls it, it's called this learning in the flow. How do I use education to enable me in my job versus put me on a course that really has 20% of the goodness that I need? Very short answer to what is a very complex question that you asked.
Yeah, I threw a hard one at you right out of the gate, but it's this is where we are, and it's we're seeing the same thing. I mean, everyone is home in the U.S. Everyone's trying to figure it out. I mean, we're recording right now on Zoom, which is, I think, the biggest platform growth we've seen in a tremendous amount of time. Their stock price is actually kind of holding up some of the market here, frankly, because of the growth they're seeing. But, digital transformation in general, let's just talk about what were you seeing kind of B2B, the big customers that you were working with, Microsoft and other Dell, others that you've done business with. What over the last kind of 3 years, what were you starting to see take off? What were you starting to see change? And what do you think will continue on?
Yeah, so again, I think we're seeing the prevalence of technology now moving into historic L&D organizations. And if you think about that, and for fear of offending anybody, if you think about learning operations, they were almost back office, and now they're coming front office. So, where the historical how an LMS was used for scheduling learning, it's now a lot more intelligent. So you're now having to have a whole new raft of competencies and requirements that now sit inside learning and development functions, be that from analytics, be that from communications and technologies, to being how to provide a learning experience. So I think what you're seeing is this progression from what was historically done on a one-to-one level is now being predictively given intelligence to, say, performance consultants to go and have more of a meaningful conversation with their customers, where it's not done on a one-to-one basis, it's done through, fact-based analysis. And you're going to see that more and more becoming prevalent when we're moving from consumption-type metrics to more qualitative metrics, and that's what these platforms now offer.
Yeah, we totally agree. And we've seen, definitely we've seen an uptick in the last 2 to 3 years for sure in the on-demand business. And this, obviously the migration from the instructor-led to, on-demand or subscription learning, digital. I had a conversation with Dirk Brana, who runs a big learning division of BMC software. And he made an interesting observation to me that regionally, Europe Asia Pacific has really liked face-to-face. We continued to like instructor-led training. People kind of gravitate towards that. US, I think, has been a little bit ahead of embracing digital, embracing on-demand, micro-learning, kind of learning in the flow, as you've said. But I think it's going to be an interesting shift. I mean, as people are kind of forced to now, how do I learn when I'm at home, or how do I learn from a device? I am curious if that's going to make a change faster than we would have seen otherwise. I don't know if you have
only in as much as the reason why there's this historical challenge in that is of contextualization of learning. So, the ability to make the jump from face-to-face, that is always going to exist. Because the problem with it is that instructor-led training is high impact, low reach. So, whilst it's always going to have value, it's very difficult and expensive to deliver. And taking people out of the workforce for a 5-day instruction is not meaningful anymore, or it's reducing. So therefore, how do you do it? Of course, you do it through blended learning. But if you can make the contextual jump between digital and experiential learning, then I think you're going to start seeing more meaningful value across the globe. And how do I think that's going to happen? I think this personalization piece is super critical. Not only do you have, the one-size-fits-all type of everybody's consuming the same stuff that doesn't really have any relevance to them. As role-based competency learning mixes with competency frameworks and it becomes more personal, then education is definitely going to be more tuned for what you need in a role. And I think you're going to see that growth happening.
I totally agree. And it's so funny when you say contextualize. I want to drill into that, because contextualize for us too, we're actually seeing learning and training content that's been, engaging, shorter form content be used more and more, even in pre-sales. I talked to you a little bit about this, but people now are exposing because the learning and the training content is super valuable. I mean, it's well done. It gives people a level of detail. And what I'm starting to see, and I'm curious in your opinion, is I'm starting to see people visiting technology company websites, and they're saying, I want to learn something more about this before I talk to a salesperson. I want to go learn a little bit about technology, and then maybe enough to be dangerous. But we're actually seeing that training and learning developed content be used for that, and it influencing the sales cycle, because people can get much smarter about a technology before they purchase. Are you seeing that? What do you think about that?
So I think there's, again, it's a massive question, but I think there's a number of points that need to bear consideration. So I think the first thing is, Person calls it learning in the flow of work. SureSkills called it our 3E model. So education, formal education, enablement, and then engagement. And as you're seeing, lots of technology companies moving from annual, semi-annual product launches over to SaaS-based capabilities, the need for that type of constant pouring in of product information updates is declining, because the updates are happening almost continuously. So there's this educate level, formal education that people need to understand the context of a subject. And then there's this enablement level where you're constantly pouring in the updates. But what we see, and I think this is an interesting fact, is if you look at when somebody's onboarded into a company, they pretty much go through a formal education process, and then everybody consumes the same enablement content. But what we're noticing is, as they become more and more confident in role, their actual presence on community-based social platforms is increasing. So they actually, they move from formal-based education to informal-based education, and they just consume it as they need it. When you put that in a pre-sales perspective, once you've broken the back of what people need in a role, they need access to the information to go and help them in the role. And especially for salespeople, prior to go out and a shout, is go and give me the short version before I go and walk in the door of this customer. And that ready access to information is we're seeing more and more prevalent use cases.
Yeah, that just in time, access to the informal stuff when they need it. We're starting to see a trend where people can contribute. So platforms that you can contribute knowledge, informal, recorded right via your mobile device, or recorded like we're doing right here, just via a screen share or even Zoom, and then contributing that to some community, and then that community being able to learn from each other. We believe in that, because I think that, as you said, you go through a formal education, onboarding that kind of everybody goes through, but then what? Now it's, well, let's get the subject matter experts in your company to contribute, the salespeople that are closing deals, the engineers that are solving problems, customer success folks that have great relationships. Like, if they contribute their own knowledge to a group, we feel like that's an amazing way for a company to grow and to share. And I don't. That's been traditionally, I think that's been kind of hard unless it's face to face. Are you seeing some of that happen as well?
So again, the different types of education domain that you're talking about. So if we're talking about enablement domains where you're taking product-centric content versus historical soft skills or hard skills type of education, if we're talking more around knowledge acquisition type of courses, I think there's always been this gap between what's produced by the massive marketing organizations is then taken by an L&D function, repurposed to create learning objectives to then push it out the door. That's not efficient. And create something that's been created once and then readapt it over and over again. And this is where we're now seeing these AI-capable platforms that are taking that context and creating these use cases quicker, faster time to content. I think the second part of the conversation is how are you designing content in the 21st century? So this notion of instructional design versus experience design, how are you integrating between LTI capabilities, CMI5 capabilities, and XAPI capabilities to create these blended informal formal solutions? Not only are we interested in what someone's taking from a course we're pushing at them, but what are they taking afterwards, and what intelligence, so you can start targeting more relevant information to wider audiences. So if this is a top performer in a role and this is what he's doing, and we can start targeting information that's driving quicker, faster time to capability. So I think interesting times, all predicated under technology.
Yeah, I talk to a lot of big companies every day, and they'll all say they're so interested in this recommendation capability, the AI of, I want prescriptive learning. I mean, everyone says let's be prescriptive. I don't want to just throw content at people. I want it to be prescriptive. I want it to be targeted, very push. So our investment, where we invest is a lot in that technology, is a lot of.
So let me challenge you on prescriptive-based learning. So again, prescriptive-based learning, it's almost a conventional wisdom where you're pushing education onto an adult, as where no one wants to be told what to do. If you can give me guided instruction as to what somebody else is doing, and it's relevant and it's contextual, and I know it's going to be meaningful for me in my role, I think that's 10 times better than being told you must do something. Because I don't know if anybody's like me. If you tell me to go and do something, I invariably go and do 180 from it.
I don't want to get told what to do. I don't want to get told what I have to go learn. It's true, but I want to go learn what I need to learn when I need it. And I think you and I are similar. I mean, we're very similar in that way. But
I think the assessment methods are very important, though, right? So I think content has its place. I think the ability to assess people and how you're driving, progression, I think that's still a moot point with a lot of people. But I think if you, especially in a lot of the consultancy pieces I've talked about. So I think the first thing is, Joe, is 92% of enterprise down companies are sitting with an LMS capability that is not intelligent. And I think the transition of the market over the next 5 years is going to see an increase from what is currently a market of, I think, 6 billion up to 22 billion as companies are transitioning to these digital capabilities. This requires a change in the conventional practices that have served L&D, in my opinion, poorly for the last 40 years. And I think we need to embrace, this change and look at how this technology capability is going to affect every practice, be that the roles that are in L&D, where functional entities that were previously at the back of office and now at the front of office. So I think there's this huge transformation that's going to occur. But of course, all organizations need to keep the lights on. This isn't flick a switch and move. But I do think, especially from SureSkills perspective, that's where you need to engage with a learning services company that goes and speaks to industry learners and leaders and helps them along this journey, because nobody's got the full answer to this problem. But we have a very specific view. We have what it is an experience readiness index that allows us to go and assess organizations and where they are in their digital transformation. And then we have an 8-step process that helps them, guide them along a journey to try and increase their capability and usage of these capabilities.
I think that's a huge gap right there that you just talked about, which is, technology. Obviously, we're at Raven 360. We're a learning management system. We're a modern LMS. We think kind of the next generation of that. But I do think that the gap is exactly what you just said, which is there's strategy, there's understanding, there's understanding capabilities within the organization. What do you have now? Where are you today, and where do you need to be? And I think companies need a lot of help with that. And I think they don't historically haven't even know where to start it. So to me, that's a SureSkills opportunity. That's the SureSkills. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that's what we're saying, right?
Yeah. Well, the thing about it is everybody likes to think they're unique, and everybody likes to think that they've got differentiation. But pretty much, in my experience, from the largest to the smallest, it's the same problems over and over again, and it's people. There you go. So it's people and organizational chaos and change. And in a new world order, change is the constant change driver. And what we tend to see is the practices that have served companies well for the last 10 years, they require adaptation. And, what at least we try and do is sit with our customers and challenge some of these conventional wisdoms and practices, and at least try and support them with, needs analysis, our insight across industries, verticals, and segments, and try and partner with them as they're investing in a capability to understand that they need some help. It's great having a new technology capability put in place, but we see a lot of these organizations that do this is that they sit there and sort of get the thing put in place and then wonder, well, where am I going? So we'd like to be more left of the conversation. And I think that will help realize a greater return on the investment that they've put into putting the platform there in the first place.
So we've talked here about kind of internal and internal onboarding and skills development. Let's talk about the technology companies you've worked with. A lot of stuff that we do is helping our customer how to use technology. So once a Dell or Microsoft or a VMware, or in our case, somebody like a Confluent or a UiPath, once they sell their technology to a customer, onboarding and getting the customer to use that technology really, really effectively, we think is a huge need, because we all sell technology on an annual subscription now. And if you come to the end of your 12-month subscription and someone's not using it really effectively, it's a risk. And so what have you seen? Have you seen that start to change as well, from just pure ILT to on demand? Or what do you think the importance there is of the overall customer education component?
Well, I think you raise an interesting point from a B2B perspective, but a B2C and a B2P perspective. I think if you think about enablement programs and how they're enabling their partners to act as an indirect capability, I think that's going to require significant reinvention. And I think digital-based technologies offer that. And I think from a B2C perspective, again, our very unique position is we see role-based competency learning that everybody's tried and never really been successful, or a sweeping statement number 5, that many have never been able to put in place. We see that there's now this opportunity because at the back-end capability of these platforms, it's skills and role-based at its core nature. So I think this harmonizing of your internal strategic strategy to, say, annual customer commoditization and renewal of subscription learning, I think it needs to be more personalized to their learning needs. So if you're a customer, it's usually based on, I want to be in a role and be successful, as opposed to a la carte, let's consume. Again, I still think it's the same model. It needs to be targeted to their individual needs. So I do think this pushing of content has its place. I do think that the future world should be done against the success criteria, or what excellence looks like. And for customers, it's usually some form of accreditation or certification. And I think if we can guide them quicker to achieving success, I think then it's natural that they're going to look at their subscription offering. But I think the subscription offering for that case is to achieve a certification. I think where customer education is going to go is, how does this subscription help me in my job? And if you can create contextual, relevant conversation that says, I've invested in a new technology capability, and then keep on updating people on a regular basis with content that's relevant to them, I think that's an interesting proposition.
Yeah, I loved what you just said there, is that, because I agree, has to be I think learning in the stream of work, contextual learning absolutely applies to customer education. And it should, because it's like traditionally that has been a push, just like we've pushed learning and training on people. But if you can be smarter about it and say, what does someone need right now, at the moment, in this product or in this technology, and give it to them, then so much more valuable. I mean, they're going to learn it. They're going to learn it.
But that's why you see a lot of old historical customer-facing education authorities now called customer success, right? So I think for me is, constantly in this conversation, do we charge for partner education? Do we charge for partner enablement? Do we charge for customer education? What is that charge? What is the meaning to us? Are we trying to reduce core volume? Are we trying to increase NPS? What is it? They're not going away. They're always there. But I think for profit center customer education, I think to generate increased conversion from historical legacy practices of a la carte consuming of e-learning to more contextual, personalized learning that's targeted to them, I think you'll definitely see an increase in revenue rates there.
Oh yeah, and I love that, because also I think that helps the customer success organization. Could you imagine a customer that says, hey, this is what I want to learn. This is what I need in context. Customer success would have more visibility to the customer, and they'd be able to say, oh, let's target conversations. Let's target learning. Let's help them where they need to be helped.
At the back end of all that, Joe, back to the earlier point, with the capabilities of XAPI CMI5, not only are you seeing what they're consuming on a formal level, you're also tracking what they're doing on an informal level as well, right? So,
right.
Especially on inside corporate networks. And
right.
This is where this constant adaptation and tailoring and focusing can become, more targeted and relevant. So I think, interestingly, I think, again, analytics tends to be a dirty word in L&D functions, and this is the new opportunity, right? This is the new world order, learning insights. Yes,
I totally agree. We love analytics, so we're trying to promote that and learn as best we can along the way as well. Well, listen, Andy, this has been a great conversation. I have a feeling I'm going to get a lot of text and a lot of emails saying, can you get Andy back on and go a little more detailed? So I'm pretty sure we're going to have to talk again and record some more. in the
It'd
near
be
future.
great if the questions weren't the biggest questions in the planet. They would be great.
Hey man, I gotta ask. You're a smart guy. I gotta ask you the hard questions. We want to hear from you. Well, listen. Again, I'm Joe Moriarty. I'm the CEO of Raven 360, and with me today was Andy Vidler, Chief Learning Officer at SureSkills. Thank you so much, Andy. It's been a great conversation. And again, I'd love to talk to you again soon.
Thanks.
Okay. Cheers.